You might think Fukurokuju is gone for good, but he has a big purpose left in Wano. He's secretly a god among his race of the Longhead tribe. People always talk about Kaido dying, people talk about Zoro dying, the JoyBoy dying, but nobody has mentioned yet that Fukurokuju has the power to raise the dead. Up until this point in the story, he seems like a useless character, but stick around to find out how Fukurokuju will save Orochi and escape Onigashima as I crack the code to Fukurokuju's crazy race, the Longhead tribe.
Hey, nigga better turn me.
Hey all, Golden Boy here. That's a lot of times to say Fukurokuju. Just full transparency, I'm probably gonna mess it up a couple times in this video and stutter. You might be wondering what I'm talking about here, but I'm serious. I came upon the realization that Fukurokuju can bring people back to life. It sounds crazy because we haven't seen it in the manga yet, I know, but we have good reason to believe it because Fukurokuju is literally a god that can raise the dead. And I'm serious. I'll explain a little bit more about what that means later in the video, but once I discovered this fact, I decided I needed to know more about the long-headed tribe and his lineage. And what I found out's pretty cool. They didn't even have the long-headed tribe listed in the One Piece wiki either, so I put a bunch of research into this video. I promise it will be interesting and that you're going to learn something new, so please stick around as we will discuss Fukurokuju's ancestors, how his tribe will affect the future arcs in the story, and finally how Fukurokuju can raise the dead, and what we might see him do here in Wano to escape Onigashima. But first, let's solve his lineage. The connections lie, surprisingly, in Skypiea. So, Skypiea. I went back to reread it. I think everyone's that skipped Skypiea is now regretting it after reading Wano. Skypiea stock is up, my friends. Ever since we have this blue serpentine-like creature that was worshipped as the false sun god, we started to realize that there are some parallels here between Wano and Skypiea. And there's a lore dump in Skypiea as well, so in case you don't remember, let me break down the history here. It all starts on the moon. The Moon Kingdom was known as Burka, and on Burka, the moon, we had a couple of different tribes. We had the Skypians, the Burkans, and the Shandians. They were the winged people. They all lived on the moon. And they invented all of this crazy advanced technology and a robot tribe called the Automata. And then when the resources ran dry, they dipped. They all flew down from the moon to the blue planet. The Skypians and the Burkans, however, landed on the clouds, on the Sky Islands. Whereas the Shandians went all the way down, they stayed on the blue sea on Jaya before it was blasted into the sky hundreds of years later via the Knockup Stream, and thus Upper Yard was born, creating the crazy power struggle that is the Skypiea arc. Now during the Skypiea arc, we meet Enel, the god. He's a Burkan that discusses his ancestors' legends. The Burkans spoke of this place called the Fairy Verth, or the Endless Verth, and it's believed to be the moon. And it was. We see Enel head there during the Enel Great Space Operations cover arc story, and we saw him read the historical hieroglyphs of his people. His people, the Burkans, believed that the Endless Verth is where gods belong. Now this concept of this endless land of the gods reminds me of the Red Line, actually. It's endless as it stretches across the blue planet without ever stopping or breaking. It's like the Norse myth of the red snake Jormungandr. The Red Line might also be considered the Endless Verth, as it stretches infinitely, and it's the place where we see God's kingdom, a race of winged people that are worshipped as gods. King's race, the Lunarians. So did the Lunarians have the same ancestors as the other winged skyfolk? I'm tempted to say yes, and I think they have very similar physical similarities and a similar backstory, their lore. The Skypians, the Burkans, and the Shandians, they all came from the moon kingdom called Burka. Maybe the Lunarians did as well. I mean, they have lunar in their very name. Maybe it was one tribe, the Burka, that disembarked from the moon, and once they depleted the moon's resources, they immigrated to the blue planet. And different individuals landed in different places all throughout the planet, and they all adapted, gaining different physical traits, and that's just like how evolution occurred here on Earth in real life. On the Red Line, the moon people's descendants had to become heat resistant, fiery, and impenetrable. Thus, the Lunarians we know today were born, or should I say they evolved. They had to become gods if they wanted to survive. Well, actually, none of them survived anyway, as nearly their entire race was wiped from the Red Line. And unfortunately, the last living member of this race that we could ask was de-winged and defeated by Zoro, so RIP. I remember when King was defeated, I was pissed, because I wanted to hear a lot more about the Lunarians' lore and their backstory. Now who can we ask about the winged people's history? Zoro just maybe low-key killed the last one. Enel's cover story is over. Where else are we going to learn these hieroglyphs? Don't fret, because we actually have one more Sky Citizen that we have yet to hear from. Perhaps Orochi, as a Birkin himself, will be the one to help us understand the descendants of the Moon People. And I promise that this is all going to tie back to Fukurokuju, it will, and the Long-Headed Tribe. But first, let's discuss Orochi and hear him out. After all, we're just waiting to hear from the last supernova in the Emperor Saga. Don't you think that before we conclude, we're going to see at least a little bit more from Jewelry Bonnie and a lot more from Orochi? He's like the only one we have nothing about. Remember, when we first kickstarted all of this, we saw Orochi on a sky island, watching Kaido leap to his own death. He's involved in this saga. As Wano wraps up, we're going to be seeing what's going on in the outside world, which means we're going to see what Bonnie was doing at the Reverie, and there's a chance that we get her out to Wano to age Momonosuke back down to normal. And Orochi, well, I guess we'll get to wait to see what he does. It's a common belief that he'll be an Elbaf, or at least I think it's safe to say that we're going to flesh his story out in the near future. With King out of the picture, and many questions pertaining to the Lunarian race, perhaps Orochi's storyline will explain the relationship between his Birkin heritage and the Lunarians. It would be the perfect time to reintroduce Enel as a Birkin as well, because we know that he's just waiting up on the moon with an army of automata. Speaking of Enel, let's tie him to Wano quickly, and more importantly, to Fukurokuju. See, I promised. There's a chance that these two long earlobed fellows are actually cousins, or at the very least, they're distant relatives. I'll say first, culturally, they have a similar pattern of clothing, which I hate as a piece of evidence. I get that, yeah, this is whatever. They both have the similar Sharingan looking style to them, that's fine. More importantly, they both have the long earlobes. We see people of all factions, pirates, marines, cipher pole, and even citizens, as members of the Long Arm tribe, but we've only seen two characters with long earlobes. Could they be related just because they share this one trait and sense of fashion? Perhaps. Enel doesn't appear to have a long head, but Fukurokuju didn't really have a long head until he got much older anyway. So perhaps Enel is a long-headed Birkin. Birkins and longheads might be related. Remember, when Enel spoke of his family heritage, his homeland, Fairy Verth, he went to the moon. He went to his homeland and he encountered space pirates, and these space pirates had long heads. They were doing the same thing. They discovered the ancient Moon Kingdom as well, their homeland. Did these space pirates come from the same Birkin ancestors as Enel? The original moon ancestors? Did the long-headed people originate on the moon? I think it's likely, because not only do we see the long-head space pirates, but there's actually another man with a long head that can trace his ancestry back to the moon. And that man is named Dr. Tsukimi. He's the long-head man from the Blue Sea that had literally the exact same tech as the moon people during Enel's cover story. He has the long head just like Fukurokuju, and he created the automata on the blue planet, just like the moon people. An invention native to his ancestors, the automata were invented by the moon people and brought to Earth. How could Tsukimi, which translates to Moon Watcher, by the way, have the same exact tech as the moon people and share the same physical characteristics as the space pirates that returned to their homeland? Because the Longhead tribe actually originated from the moon, just like the Winged Sky people. It's really starting to seem like all of the life on the blue planet started on the moon. When resources ran dry, they all just traveled and landed all over in different spots on the blue planet. So what can we learn about all of this? Skypiea already happened, and Enel has dipped to his ancestor's kingdom, previously known as Burka, aka the moon. Well, the fact that he had a cover story, and the fact that we don't know much about Orochi, means that we'll probably be seeing them both in the future. So why not see them together and have this all play out in Elbaf? It's likely the next arc anyway. After all, Birka was named after a place in the real world in Scandinavia. It was a crucial port up in the land of Vikings. And when you think of Norse mythology and Vikings, you tend to think of Elbaf. And it makes me wonder what this giant tree in Elbaf is. Because if you recall, when the Straw Hats first got to Skypiea, Gonfall mentioned that they took the hard way up, the knock-up stream. There's a peak of the High West, is what it was called, where you can just Sky Island hop. There's an easier way up to the heavens. Could this tree be the easy way? Could the easy way be in Elbaf, the land of giants? I found this cool diagram on Google. I saw that there's a Reddit user called Ishushalame, something like that. And he appeared to be thinking the same thing, so that's pretty cool. We may have some more sky shenanigans yet, as the Straw Hats meet Loki and all of the giants in the sky. So all of this begins to tie together very nicely before that final war arc that results in the showdown versus Emu. Back in the Skypiea days, we see Robin reading the words of the poneglyph at the ruins of Shandora, and she mentions that the Shandians fought to protect the poneglyph, their history. The Shandians, when they were part of the Blue Sea on Jaya, had to fight to preserve their history. They wanted the light of Shandora to be inextinguishable from the darkness. That is the exact same language that we see the Gorosei use when they ask Emu what light needs to be extinguished. The protectors of the poneglyph, like the Fishmen, the Nefertari family, the Minks, they all fought to protect the poneglyphs from the enemy of JoyBoy in the Ancient Kingdom. This enemy is very likely going to be Emu and the world government, the Darkness. This is endgame level stuff that's been hinted at hundreds of chapters before Wano. Oh, and speaking of Wano, we still haven't even talked about Fukurokuju's other cousin from the moon, Vegapunk. So Vegapunk is probably from the moon as well, as his tech far exceeds the technical prowess of the people here on Earth by 500 years. We know that the moon was highly advanced, technically, and that there was likely a point of origin for many tribes. Based on this one outlined pic we have of Vegapunk, he seems to be a long-head man, as he shares this trait with Fukurokuju and Dr. Tsukimi, and the Space Pirates. But the ties to Tsukimi don't stop there, actually. Vegapunk is actually from the same island as Tsukimi, the winter island Karakuri. The island of Karakuri is where Vegapunk grew up as a child. You might remember it as the Snowy Island, where Frankie studied Vegapunk's tech, but it's also the very same place where Dr. Tsukimi built his automata that he learned from his moon ancestors. The same automata that are from the moon. Could it be possible that Tsukimi is Vegapunk? At the very least, he's a relative. I don't know if Vegapunk's coming to Wano or not to see his cousin Fukurokuju, but there's plenty of callbacks to Vegapunk that come to a head here in Wano. He was on MADS, that science group which we learned about here in Wano, and that was implemented on the Vinsmoke children. Vegapunk's failed devil fruit was tied to Wano, as Momonosuke ate it, and it was referenced by the CP0 members during this very raid. Sea stone, a material that he used to coat ships to allow the world government to sail through the calm belt, originated in Wano. Vegapunk's bodyguard even, Sentamaru, has a Wano-style rope belt. I don't know what the real term is, but it's that rope belt. And that rope belt wearer, Sentamaru, has the Enel symbol as well. It's the same thing that we see Enel and Fukurokuju wear. There's something else here that relates Vegapunk, the moon, Wano, and the Longhead tribe. Like Enel, I think Vegapunk's heritage traces back to the moon, as does Fukurokuju's. Birkins are 100% confirmed from the moon, as are all of the sky people. We see this in the hieroglyphs. There's no debating that. They are from the moon. Longhead tribe members like Dr. Tsukimi have the exact same automata tech on the blue planet as they do in the moon, as well as we see them travel to the moon as space pirates. I'd say that means both Enel and Fukurokuju are descendants of the original moon folk, being that they are Birkins and Longhead tribe respectively. So maybe God Enel is actually related to Fukurokuju, who, if you remember, I said was a god at the very beginning of this video, and I wasn't lying when I said it. He can raise the dead. much like his long-lost cousin Enel, who raised himself from the dead by restarting his heart in the lost city of gold, Shandora. In Wano, the former city of gold, we meet Fukurokuju, who not only shares his name with a real-life god from China, but even his exact appearance. Oda stole China's flow, bar for bar. Look at him, this is the exact same person. It's the same name and the resemblance is uncanny. Here's something from Wikipedia I found on Fukurokuju. The seven gods of fortune started being mentioned as a collective in the year 1420, in order to imitate the possessions of the daimyos, the feudal lords of pre-modern Japan. It is said that the Buddhist priest selected these gods after speaking with the shogun he served, at the order of seeking whoever possessed the perfect virtues of longevity, fortune, popularity, sincerity, kindness, dignity, and magnanimity. The god Fukurokuju also has origins in China, and it is believed that he used to be a hermit sage that performed miracles during the Chinese Song dynasty, distinguished for being a reincarnation of the Taoist god Zhongwu. Pause. If that name Zhongwu sounds familiar to you, it's because it's one of the four guardian deities, like Seiryu, that's Kaido's devil fruit Seiryu, the azure dragon. That black tortoise Genbu, or Zhongwu in China, was also one of the four guardians, and that dark tortoise was reincarnated into the form of the hermit named Fukurokuju. He's revered as a god. Here's a link to my black tortoise Genbu video. Okay, back to god Fukurokuju on Wikipedia. He's the god of wisdom, luck, longevity, wealth, and happiness. This god receives certain credits, such as being one of the Chinese philosophers that could live without eating, kind of sus like Green Bull. Moreover, he is the one god who's said to have the ability to resurrect the dead. Fukurokuju is characterized by the size of his head, being almost as large as the size of his whole body, and is represented wearing traditional Chinese costumes. He normally carries a cane in one hand and in the other hand a scroll with writings about the world. He is usually accompanied with a turtle, like the dark tortoise Genbu, and an animal that is frequently used in Japan to symbolize long life. He's the only member of the seven lucky gods that's credited with the ability to resurrect the dead. So there you have it. Fukurokuju is real, from China, and he can raise the dead. That's true. I wonder if our One Piece Fukurokuju can do that as well. He's based off the guardian deity Zhongwu, Genbu, the black tortoise. And as I explained in my black tortoise video, if Kaido exists as Seiryu, one of the four named guardian deities, then Zhongwu or Genbu should also probably exist. Why would we have only one of the four? Oh, and if this still wasn't enough to convince you, Zhongwu, the black tortoise that Fukurokuju was the reincarnation of, was revered as a moon god in ancient China. So Fukurokuju is from the moon confirmed. If he could truly raise the dead like the Chinese god could, then he has his work cut out for him, because the boy Orochi has died like 8 different times now. Orochi wanted to wait for Fukurokuju before bailing on Onigashima, maybe because he knew he was down to his last life, and he needed his long-head tribe member to raise the dead. Will we see Ghost Peace in Wano after all? Can all long-head tribe members raise the dead? I don't know. All I'm saying is the first time we see a long-head tribe member, it's during Enel's cover story in Thriller Bark, chapter 445, and the title of the chapter, Zombie. So, you never know, folks. I basically let my imagination run wild with this, and I discussed a bunch of arcs and drew connections. If this spurs any cool discussion, let me know in the comments below. Please like and subscribe if this wild discussion was fun for you, and have a wonderful day. Do me a favor and stay golden. Thanks for watching.